I wrote this on Saturday, the 26th of November, 2022. Labor has won re-election here in Victoria under the leadership of Dictator Dan, and you have to ask yourself, how could such an outcome occur? I mean, he's led a government that locked people in their own homes for a total of 200 days. He banned outdoor activities, he shut down schools and businesses, he was okay with police shooting people with rubber bullets. We are in debt to about $160 billion, which is more debt than New South Wales, Queensland and Tasmania combined. So how did he and his government get re-elected? In Victoria, although this is true in much of Australia, the main opposition party is rubbish. The Liberal Party once had values, and it fought hard to uphold those values. But since the 1980s, it has become harder and harder to tell the Liberal and Labor parties apart. Yes, the rot really has been going on that long, and it keeps getting worse. The problem is that they keep trying to out-left the left, which is impossible. People will always vote for the real leftists over the fake leftists. There's also a leadership problem. The Parliamentary Liberal Party is so small that there's no real leadership at all. Since 1999, each and every leader of the Liberal Party in Victoria has been a total non-entity. I said to someone this week that for all Dictator Dan's faults, he was a good politician because he was a sociopath. But the leader of the Liberals was not a good politician because he was not a sociopath. Dictator Dan is a strong leader, and the truth is that many people want that, and they will go along with nearly anything as long as he is strong. There are also policy problems: immigration, multiculturalism, trans rights, homosexual rights, feminism, global warming. The truth is that on these and many other issues, there is no substantial difference between the Labor and Liberal parties. They are the uni party. So why should people vote in favour of something that is in no way different from its opposition? Labor has always benefited from mass immigration. It is a well-established fact that immigrants vote to the left. In fact, they vote very far to the left. Both the Liberals and Labor, in fact, most of the political parties, support this policy, but Labor is the benefactor. A lot of people vote for Labor because it creates jobs in both the public and in the private sector. Of course, these jobs are always paid for by the taxpayer, sooner or later. The public sector is expanded, government departments and other government bodies get funding to increase jobs. In the private sector, Labor makes sure that it looks after the unions and the construction industry. We currently have in Victoria what is called the Big Build. It's a series of big construction jobs that cost a lot of money and keeps a lot of people employed and looks after a lot of companies and union people. These people vote heavily for Labor. And why wouldn't they? A central feature of democracy is bribing people with their own money, and it won't stop for one simple reason. It keeps working. Of course, there's a major problem with this. It costs money. Lots of money, which explains why Victoria is in so much debt. But debt is easy to ignore when there's still more money available. Here we are in a tried and true Labor situation. Parties of the left are interested in the idea of wealth redistribution, but they have little to no interest in how that wealth is created. What they are interested in is spending money, not in making it. So they often go into debt because to them, money is a form of magic, something that it is impossible to run out of. Of course, there comes a point where debt becomes such a burden that it stops being magical and it needs to be paid back. We haven't reached that point in Victoria yet, but when we do, it will hurt quite badly, like it did in the 1990s when this exact same thing happened. The good news of the election is that Labor lost about 7% of its support. Unfortunately, that is off a very high base. The last election, it got 57% of the vote, the highest it has ever been, and that loss occurred in safe Labor seats, which in the long term could spell very bad news for Labor. The Liberals lost about 2%. but a lot of votes, somewhere between 15 and 20%, went to smaller parties. Now, these parties are politically all over the place, left, right and centrist, but they are not the major parties. That number does not include the Greens, who got around 12% and should have around 6 seats in the last parliament. They had 2. Over the past 30 years, the 2 major parties' share of the vote has declined from 90% to just under 70%. It still has a long way to go, but it is going. Let's be honest, this is a very disappointing result. It would have been glorious to see Dictator Dan defeated, but it is what it is, and those of us who opposed him and everything he stood for shouldn't let this get us down. We must always be prepared for the fight, and I think we'll get one, so be ready.